Shoemaker.
Coalition Primary Forum. The Voter Education Coalition is a nonpartisan organization that sponsors candidate forums, meet and greets, and other events to educate citizens about candidates and their policies. You can learn more about VEC events by visiting their Facebook page at facebook.com/VECDGKS.com. The forum is being televised live on Midco Channel 25 and is streaming live on lawrencekansas.org/stream. It will also be available anytime on the city's YouTube channel. We would like to thank the City of Lawrence and their staff for the use of this City Commission meeting room and all of their help in making this event possible. We'd also like to thank the Douglas County Clerk's Office for the district maps that are on display out in the lobby here at the City Building, and also the ones that are on the screens here in this room. You will see by that map that the 1st District is encompassed within the boundaries of the City of Lawrence. The other two, and there are 3 county commission districts in Douglas County, the other 2 have rural districts in them as well. The rules for the forum are very simple. I will be asking questions submitted by the VEC partners and audience members. Each question will have a designated response time. At the end of this period, you'll hear a bell, and we'll move to the next candidate or question. We'll rotate the order of responses between each candidate, and there will be no rebuttals and no questions from the candidates. Each candidate will get 2 minutes as we begin today with the opening statement. And I will begin on my right, and the audience is left with Leslie Soden, a Democrat, Douglas County Commission candidate, District 1.
Thanks, Hank. And thanks to the VEC for hosting this forum. So my name is Leslie Soden, and I've lived in Lawrence for almost 20 years now. I'm a 5th-generation Kansan. My great-great-grandfather homesteaded north of Troy, just across the border from Missouri. I love it here, and so getting involved in community issues and public service was a natural extension of that. As a Lawrence City Commissioner for the last 3.5 years, and as a former mayor, I've proven my talent for practical leadership, especially related to mental health, economic development, and affordable housing. This serves as great experience for issues that the county is tackling. For example, mental health services has always been very important to me. In my first year as a commissioner, I successfully advocated for reinstating funding for the RAP program, which is a mental health program for kids in schools. Another achievement I'm proud of is that I'm the commissioner that brainstormed for creation of a new economic development policy, specifically for industrial zone properties. That new incentive has led to the construction of the very first building at Venture Park. Seeing that very first building go up it's just made me feel really proud. And for my last example of leadership, several years ago, I founded the Lawrence Affordable Housing Coalition to advocate for solutions of affordable housing. The following year, when I was a new commissioner, we created the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. And last year, citizens overwhelmingly passed a sales tax initiative specifically for affordable housing. This dedicated revenue source was the last piece of the puzzle that I started 5 years ago, so it was also a very proud moment for me. Although there's always more work to do, I hear quite a bit that people are happy with the changes that we've made here at City Hall. I've got my sea legs under me, and I'm looking forward to broadening my scope to the county. If you want to see positive and thoughtful change happen for the county, then vote for me, Leslie Soden, because experience really does make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. And our second candidate at the table today is John Magnuson. John, it's your turn.
Thank you. And thank you also to the Voter Education Coalition for putting this on, and thank all of you for coming today. I am a lifelong progressive Democrat. Having been born and raised here in Kansas, I don't think that that's a huge shock to most people. And I approach most of the issues that we've been discussing as a county through that lens. To that end, I'm running because I advocate for a realignment of our county budget to match our community priorities. This means increased funding and support for mental health services, for substance abuse treatment services, for affordable housing, and in particular, for those areas where these issues we've been discussing intersect. I support a housing-first approach to these issues, which will require some additional study to really understand the volume of need in the community, but I think that these are issues that we can tackle. I'd like to just take a moment and ask all of you if you are interested in helping to get the message of our campaign out and really to further the progressive ideals that we have as a community. Please go to my website, votemagnuson.com, or go to my Facebook page and give me your info. I'd be happy to talk to you more about particular issues and also about the important work that we need to do to get the message out. Thank you.
And the third name that will appear on the Democratic ballot at the primary on August the 7th is Patrick Kelly. Patrick?
Good afternoon, and I too want to thank the VEC for hosting and organizing today's forum, and I want to thank all of you for being out here and all of you out there who are watching and listening. Thank you. I recognize that for many people, for a variety of reasons, attending these can be difficult, and I applaud the VEC for making it accessible to many people. I have been trying to improve the lives for Douglas County people for my entire professional career. I'm very proud of the relationships that I've developed after, as being an educator. I've lived in Lawrence for almost 30 years, and I'd like to bring that sense of collaboration and partnership to the Douglas County Commission. I've spent a lot of time sitting in this chair, or one of these chairs up here, as a member of the Douglas County Planning Commission, listening to the people of our community tell me what they value about Douglas County. We have a great community, but they've also told me what they are concerned about and what challenges them. And I think we have to have a plan to move forward to address that in a way that puts the values of Douglas County first and the people of Douglas County first. I've also really enjoyed over the past couple weeks going door to door and visiting with voters in Douglas County about what concerns them and being invited into their homes. They've made it clear that they're looking for a fresh voice among their elected officials. They've told me that they want people who respect the voters that they represent. I bring a set of leadership principles and experience to the Douglas County Commission for honest, inclusive, and principled leadership that I think will really help us solve problems. I will not divide this community. I will bring people together to solve challenges. It's what I've been doing for a long time and what I plan to do as a Douglas County Commissioner.
All right. Thank you very much. And as we go to our second question, we'll start the answers this time with candidate John Magnuson. And tell us about your campaign team, John, and how they help you with your decision-making process regarding campaign issues.
Well, thank you. For this campaign for Douglas County District 1, my campaign is very small. We don't, raise funds from corporate donors or special interests. It's all small dollar donations. and volunteer work. Most of the feedback and the input to our campaign in terms of the issues, both defining which issues are important as well as the stance on those issues, is really informed primarily by conversations with the community. In canvassing, in comments to us through the website and Facebook, the community is spoken pretty loudly and clearly about those issues that they care about and about the direction that they want this commission to take. And that's really been much more so than campaign volunteers or campaign members. That's been much more so where I've gotten the direction for my campaign.
All right, and Patrick Kelly.
Well, I'm glad you asked this question, Hank, because I'm very appreciative and thankful for our entire volunteer crew that is on our campaign team. We have a large number of volunteers who help think about what is important to Douglas County. I recognize that my perspective is yet one perspective in Douglas County, and it's important to have a very diverse group of people with diverse thoughts to talk about how we should move forward in Douglas County. Certainly, I can't understand every issue, and certainly I need help. We have what we call a voter engagement team because we feel strongly that there's a large group of members of our community who don't feel comfortable coming to the table to talk about issues, and that we need to join them at their table and understand what's important to them and how we can move forward as a community. I am looking forward to some events we have coming up that are going to those populations to listen and learn what is concerning to them and how they think we can move forward together to create a better Douglas County. I have a great team. I'm very appreciative of all their work and look forward to our continued work in the next few weeks.
And Leslie Soden.
Yeah, well, I was really excited when I decided that I wanted to look at running again. And so I called a lot of the same people that supported me for city commission and talked to them about it as well. And they were supportive as well. So that was that was a really nice moment for me. I made sure that on the campaign, when we talk about issues, I actually have a balanced number of people that voted for and against the ballot initiative for the jail expansion. So that was really important to me to make sure we weren't just siding with one or the other. It was important to look at what both sides were saying and incorporate both of those views. I was really lucky this time too, because it certainly made fundraising easier, having done it, for city commission before, just calling up the previous people that supported me and talking to them again. And as a city commissioner, I already get feedback on a daily basis about the issues that are facing our community. So I'm really excited to just kind of expand that thinking, not just from the city, but to the county at what we're doing. And it's been kind of a growth issue for me, growth as in personal growth. So I just enjoyed the race as well.
All right. Our next question is rather lengthy. You will have a 2-minute period of time to answer this one. Did you support the 3 sales tax initiatives that the city placed on the ballot last fall? If yes, which ones and why? If not, why not? The county commission was presented with 3 options they could use to, and you can go ahead with that particular question that I just finished, the 3 sales initiatives last fall. If you supported, which ones and why or why not?
The 3 city? Is that what you're
The
asking?
city
Hank?
placed on the ballot last fall. There were 3 initiatives that were placed on a city ballot last fall.
So one was for affordable housing, and I definitely supported that one. I think the Affordable Housing Committee has done a wonderful job on that one. I will admit that I wasn't expecting this question, and I would. Can you refresh my memory on the other 2?
Transit and infrastructure.
Transit and infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
So I believe I supported all 3 of them. Like I said, I'm very supportive of affordable housing For transit, I think we certainly need to do all we can to lower any barriers that we can for the people of our community to accessing ability to work. And the last one, infrastructure. Right outside my home right now, well, not outside my home, but right very close to my home, we're having major infrastructure work on Castle. I was very happy to see that being done. So I understand that sometimes sales tax is challenging. When we have sales tax, it can be a very difficult tax for some of our most vulnerable citizens, but the issues that are presented there, affordable housing, transit, and infrastructure, certainly are very important to our community, and I'm glad to see those move forward.
County Commission candidate Leslie Soden.
Yeah, well, I voted yes on all three of those. Transit has actually been a really important issue to me because I didn't own a car until I was 27 years old, and I moved back to Kansas, by the way. So having a way for people to get around, to get to their job, and not having to rely on a car, or they might have a car that'll break down and then they can't get to work, and then they can't keep a job. Transportation is a really important part of anyone sustaining their career, basically. So that was definitely something that I approved of. And then infrastructure, I believe if I remember right, we dealt with some fire department issues and roads as well, and I'm always happy to support those. It's just part of being a city commissioner. And affordable housing was really important to me, as I mentioned before. I don't want to repeat myself, but of course, a few years ago, I started the Lawrence Affordable Housing Coalition, and that this was just the last piece of the puzzle, and having a dedicated sales tax revenue for affordable housing initiatives was really important, because I'm sure a lot of people in this room know that we can apply for grants all day, but that doesn't mean that that's a sustained form of income for that issue. So having a steady form of income for one issue, I was just so happy that it passed, and by such a big majority.
All right, and John?
So this is a little bit complicated. For the three specifically that were on the ballot last fall, I did reluctantly support two of the three and a little less reluctantly support the third. So I support all three initiatives. I think affordable housing is crucial for this community. We have a crisis here in Lawrence and a crisis throughout Douglas County on affordable housing, and we need to find ways as a community to fund those initiatives. As Leslie mentioned, transit is crucial. It's across a very wide spectrum of our residents. It's very important to their daily lives, not just their careers, but if they need to go to the grocery store, certainly in many areas in town there isn't one within walking distance. If they need to access our medical facilities, et cetera, the transit was very important. And infrastructure. That's one of the core responsibilities of the city, taking care of our roads, and it's a core responsibility of the county. Now, here's why I reluctantly supported these initiatives. In general, I do not like sales tax as a funding mechanism for a lot of these core community services. I would much rather see them funded through property taxes and something less regressive. Advocate for the implementation of a property tax exemption for some value of property taxes in order to make that property tax code more progressive. But I would like to see, wherever possible, less regressive funding means used for these core community services.
All right, thank you. And now on our third question, as we go to our next question, we'll be back with Leslie Soden as the candidate who will start. This question is going to be lengthy because I'm going to give you the three options that the county commission was presented. They were presented with three options they could use to craft a ballot question about funding mental health projects. Which of these, if any, would you support and why? And if not, why not? We'll have 2 minutes on this one, but let me run through these. Approving 4.3 mills in additional property tax authority to provide the $5.75 million needed to retire debt for the campus at the jail facility and pay for expanded behavioral health programming. The second, approving a half-cent sales tax under the same state statutory authority used in Proposition 1. The estimated annual revenue on that was $9.8 million. Or approving a quarter-cent sales tax through a state statute brought to the county's attention this week. the estimated annual revenue would be $4.9 million. And again, those were the three options that the county was presented. And do you have one or any thoughts about these three propositions that were presented to the county for discussion? Again, 2 minutes on this, starting with Leslie Soden.
Yeah, well, anything that the voters vote for, I'm going to support regardless. I'm going to say that straight up. But I really like the ideas that are going behind it. It seems like we're getting more creative at what we're doing. Me personally, if I were a county commissioner, I would probably look more to the quarter cent, just because that would provide a more immediate form of tax monies to get initiatives going. And then the next year, perhaps we could do a different quarter cent tax on some other kind of issue related to mental health or criminal justice. So I think that the quarter cent is a really good step into what we're doing. But like I said, I mean, if the voters vote for the other two, I'm going to support those as well. You know, that was really important to me with the city. I didn't do any advocating on any of the three sales tax initiatives. It's just when we turn it over to the voters and put it on the ballot, it becomes theirs, and I will support what they choose to do. And I'll do the same here.
All right, 2 minutes for John Magnuson.
Yeah, one minor correction. The statute that was recently brought to the attention of the county commission would allow for a quarter cent or a half cent sales tax devoted to health initiatives. It wouldn't necessarily rely on the statute that was previously used for Proposition 1. That said, as I mentioned before, generally speaking, I'm not in favor of sales tax to fund these core community services. I would much rather see us move forward funding it through property taxes. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is that the statute that the county may rely on for the quarter or half cent sales tax isn't fully understood right now in terms of what the restrictions on that money may be. And the mental health and substance abuse issues in this county are broad. It's more than just a crisis center. It's more than just a building. We need ongoing services. We need in-community, in-homes ongoing services. And it's not yet clear that that statute and the funding from that statute could be used for those services. The other reason, of course, is the sales tax I view as more regressive, and it would place a burden on that community, which we're really looking to help through these. So I do support expanded funding for those services. I would like to see the county move forward through funding that with property taxes rather than sales taxes.
And Patrick Kelly.
So first I want to say I think that's how good government works, this identification of the quarter cent and half cent sales tax opportunity. People were able to come together, work together, county staff and the group from Justice Matters, and I'm really encouraged by that kind of partnership and trying to find other ways of funding such a challenge for our community. In regard to I'll deal with sort of the middle one first, which is essentially the same statute, using it again and doing a half cent for mental health. I worry a little bit about the community's trust of that process, because we could move all of our funds over, all of our mental health care to that, and then we would come back and do the jail. It's sort of like a bait and switch to me. And I think the voters have been clear that they're not supportive of that at this time. In regard to property tax, I think it's important to listen to the public and understand that property tax hurts our oldest, some of our elderly citizens the most. They have most of their wealth tied up in their homes, and if they're on fixed incomes, that can certainly be challenging. I would be supportive of the quarter cent sales tax. I understand that sales taxes can be challenging for our most vulnerable citizens, but I do think that it gives a little bit of time for our partnerships within our mental health community to develop. They're doing some really great things. We've seen some visible results, some tangible results, but some of those partnerships are very new, and to just throw money at the problem with a half cent sales tax, I think, doesn't give them the time to mature and grow and make sure that we're using those tax dollars in a way that supports better mental health for Douglas County.
All right. And our next question will have 60 seconds in which to answer. And John, you'll begin it. The question, are you concerned about the safety of staff and inmates at the jail now? If yes, how should it be addressed in the near term? And if no, why not?
Safety is always a concern at any jail or correctional facility. So yes, I'm certainly concerned. And the jail is experiencing overcrowding, which does exacerbate that issue. There's really two things that I think would have the most positive effect in the near term on those issues. The first is a concerted effort to reduce incarceration rates, identify those paths to incarceration that most affect our community, and address them specifically. The second would be increased staffing at the jail. More beds would not necessarily equal more safety. If there's concerns with safety, more staff has been shown to improve safety much more than just more space. So those would be the two areas I would focus on initially.
All right, and Patrick Kelly.
I appreciate the question, Hank. I think it's time to move the conversation away from a bigger jail to a safer jail. I don't think anyone disagrees that our criminal justice system is flawed. We certainly need to study and understand how we can do a better job of supporting criminal justice reforms. We recognize that our criminal justice system is has symptoms of, the failure of it has symptoms of institutionalized racism. It creates a cycle of poverty. That said, our jail needs to be a safe place. I've visited the jail. I've seen the people at the jail. Our corrections officers are very young. They're 18, 19 years old. That's an entry-level position. We cannot have female prisoners all in the same pod from minimum, medium, and maximum security. We need to create a safe jail, and we need a plan to do that that doesn't overburden our financial resources.
And our third to answer is Leslie Soden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Making the jail safe for inmates and employees is really important. I definitely support both ways. I think that we really need to look at temporary modular units. Perhaps we could put the more high hazardous, I guess. I'm trying to think of insurance terms because I'm working on my insurance test. But the high hazardous inmates, and perhaps keeping them inside of the actual jail proper, and then moving the more low hazard inmates out into the temporary modular unit, I think would be a really good first step. So I know that we've also been partnering with different counties to farm out basically inmates. If we can stop doing that, if we start using modular units, I think that would be super great. But obviously, if we have to continue that, we have to keep the jail safe for both inmates and employees.
All right. Our next question is a rather lengthy question. It has a 1-minute answering time. Let me run through it. And Patrick, you will be the first to answer this one. Would you support the suggestion of Justice Matters in its call for a comprehensive analysis of our local criminal justice system to identify reforms, alternatives, and preventative measures to lower our jail population, to be completed by one of the firms contracted by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation for its Safety and Justice Challenge Program? If yes, why? If no, why not? 60 seconds.
Great. Yes, I do support a comprehensive look at our criminal justice system done by an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan group. I was encouraged by District Attorney Branson's letter, which opened that up, and I think that really highlights the key when we talk about a review of our criminal justice system. It's the role of the county to bring together all of the different partners that are part of our criminal justice system. It's not just the county commission. It's got to involve the district attorney. It's got to involve judges. It's got to involve Topeka as well. And we need to bring them together so that they can understand what's being surveyed, that they buy into the survey, and that they certify that the results of that study. I'm very supportive of it. I think it's going to give us good news and give us good data-driven, evidence-based ideas on how we can improve our criminal justice system.
All right. Leslie Soden?
Yeah, I really feel like that was a missed opportunity for the county to partner with a group that was looking to fund these kind of initiatives that puts us more on the front burner of doing things when we already have funding from another outside source. It kind of reminded me of when we were picking the new city manager for City Hall. What was really important to us, and I wanted to make sure I got all three adjectives, so I had to pull out my information, was an outside experienced an independent perspective. That is so important for us, and especially when you're dealing with the criminal justice system, that is a very complicated system. And just the more eyes we can get on it, the better. But we also need to make sure we look at our current employees and what they think we need to do and not leave them out of the decision.
All right. And finally, John.
Yes, I do support the call for an independent, outside, comprehensive study. As Patrick mentioned, it does need to include not just the sheriff and the district attorney. It will also need to include, the district courts and the Lawrence Police Department, so that we can really get an understanding. It is a little bit disheartening that over 3 years of debate about the jail expansion and spending over $500,000 on architectural plans for the jail, there wasn't an effort to spend some of those funds instead on a comprehensive study looking at really what are the causes of incarceration. So I do support that, and I think it will yield really positive results for our community.
All right, thank you very much. I believe that completes all three on that particular question. Leslie, you will have the first answer on our next question. What community services specifically do you think the county could invest in to reduce the current level of incarceration? In other words, what should the county be doing that you feel it's not doing now? Again, 1 minute on this particular question.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in increasing diversions, reducing bond amounts, using ankle bracelets for house arrest, and advocating for the state to fund another judge to speed up trial times for those people that are waiting in jail, waiting for their trial to come to.
All right, and John Magnuson.
Yeah, thank you. This is, again, I don't want to be that guy who says we need a study about everything. But until we do a comprehensive study of our criminal justice system and what the pathways to incarceration are, we're really just gambling and making very expensive guesses. So that is step one. There are, however, some evidence-based programs that have shown to be very effective in reducing crime, and in particular, reducing the instance of incarceration for those things that are really just the criminalization of poverty. And it really starts with housing first. For folks suffering from mental health issues, for folks suffering with substance abuse disorders, Housing First has been shown to really help support their rehabilitation and their reintegration into our community and avoid incarceration. So that would be my starting point on this. Thank you.
Patrick Kelly.
So it's certainly seductive to want to reel off a bunch of reforms that we could do, but I am not a professional in the criminal justice world. And I have learned from my time on the Planning Commission and with other organizations that sometimes it's good to trust those professionals and those who study and work in this arena on a regular basis with what the best solutions are. We don't want to micromanage. We want to be informed, we want to understand, and we want to see evidence of what works. As a county commissioner, what I commit to do is to look at that evidence and see that data, to be thoughtful and curious and ask good questions about how we can reduce our jail population and not limit ourselves to a list that I read online somewhere or that someone in the community said, hey, I think this is good. That's why we need a study, and that's why we need to understand what evidence-based practices are out there, how we can put them to work and make sure that they're working.
Thank you, Patrick Kelly. And now we'll move to the next question, and it doesn't have anything to do with the recent election that we had. We're going to move on to another topic that's been part of the discussion in the community and the county in the last few weeks. And this will be a 60-second answer. And John, when I finish, you can start. The city of Lawrence has had a ban on fireworks since 2002, yet it's difficult to enforce. Would you consider working with the city of Lawrence on ways the county could modify the sale of fireworks in Douglas County so that it might cut down on the illegal use of fireworks in Lawrence? Yes or no? Why? Why not?
I gotta admit, I didn't expect this question.
All these city issues.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to ask this question, but
So I'm going to speak a little off the cuff here. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of an out-and-out ban on fireworks in the city of Lawrence. I know that there's a number of safety issues that we need to address, but I'd like to see perhaps a relaxing of the outright ban and allow some of the less dangerous fireworks to be used here in the city. You know, some low-level fountains. You know, the kind of fireworks that parents are comfortable with their kids using. I don't know that we need to have that ban in the city of Lawrence. So I think I'll take secret option 3.
Okay. Patrick?
You know, my family moved here in June with our baby was born on the same day, but we moved here. And I had never quite experienced anything like Lawrence on the 4th of July when fireworks were available. And I remember people telling me to wet down my roof because it had been dry and it could certainly be dangerous. I welcomed that ban. I think it makes for a safer Lawrence. I think considering the drier climates that we have recently, that it makes it more of a threat to our open spaces when we are using fireworks in the city of Lawrence. And thirdly, I think we have a lot of animals out there and people who are struggling when they hear such loud noises coming from all those fireworks. The county's role, I think we would have to talk about, but I do support the ban, and I think I probably would work with the city to see how we could continue to enforce that ban and reduce such dangerous things in our community.
All right, then Leslie Soden, your fireworks feelings.
Well, I think it's really important that we work with the county no matter what the city does. It kind of reminds me of, we just passed the massage regulations having to do with body work. And one thing that we want to make sure is that we don't just push those things out into the county that we do. So no matter what we do at the city, we need to be working with the county.
All right. And Patrick, you'll be the one that starts on this one. Candidates complete lots of surveys during their campaigns. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to share the surveys / questionnaires / answers you've given to different groups that you may have answered via social media, yes or no? And just 30 seconds on this one.
That's an easy one. I already have. Every one of the questions that I've answered on social media is included on my website. Every survey that I have been asked for has been uploaded. I have permission from the people who I had the conversations with on Facebook, so go to patrickkellyfordouglascounty.com and you can read all of my responses.
All right. And Leslie?
I'm not aware of anything that we haven't done that has, or I should say I'm not aware of anything we have filled out, all 3 of us at least, or even just myself personally, that is not already out in the public domain. So if there's something I'm not thinking of, please let me know.
All right. And John Magnuson?
Yes. Any survey, any questionnaire, et cetera, should be readily accessible. And I think this actually goes not just to this campaign, but in general, I support a very open government. You know, the communications between our government officials and those that work for us should always be public and readily accessible for the people. It shouldn't take an excessive amount of money through an open records request to get those sorts of things.
All right. Our next question, and Leslie will begin on this one. The deadline for candidates to release their campaign finance report is August 1st. However, early voting actually begins July 17th, later this week. In the spirit of transparency and as a courtesy to early voters, would you be willing to release your current finance report by July 17th by way of social media? Yes or no? And again, 30 seconds on that one.
As long as my treasurer can make that happen, sure.
All right. And John?
Yeah, I don't want to place any undue burdens on my treasurer, but it seems like that should be totally possible.
Okay. And Patrick?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Now, we'll move on to our next question, and we will be looking at questions from our audience as we move through this next group. Please, if you're in the audience today and you have questions, remember, don't ask specific questions for one candidate, only make them general questions. So I'll ask the audience here today to pick up those cards and to ask those questions. Do you favor expansion, increasing the number of the county commissioners? Do you increasing the number of county commissioners elected from throughout Douglas County? If so, why, and what do you think a good number of commissioners might be, and if not, why not? And I believe we start with John on this one.
Yes, I do support expanding the county commission for a couple of reasons. The first is really just practical logistics. With only 3 commissioners, no two commissioners can have a one-on-one conversation about county business, or it needs to be an open record, an open meeting. It makes it difficult for the commission to do its work. The second is that the city of Lawrence is over 80% of the population in the county, but it currently gets a third of the vote on the commission. And I think this leads to times when those issues that are of particular importance to Lawrence residents get a little less attention and a little less hearing at the county commission level. So I would like to see us add 2 more commissioners. I would like those commissioners to primarily, those districts to primarily be formed from Lawrence, so that the representation of Lawrence residents at the county level would be, more in line with its population.
All right. And then we move on to
Do you want me to? Yeah. So first, I do not presume that District 1 is the only district that represents the city of Lawrence. There are portions of District 2 and District 3 that include the city of Lawrence. In fact, all of eastern Lawrence from Massachusetts Street over is represented in another district. I would need to know first and understand what the purpose is of why we would want to go to 5 commissioners. I recognize that communication is difficult, and there's a high reliance on our county administrator to have communication when there's only 3 due to the Kansas Open Meetings Act. But in my research, so many communities, even ones larger than us, have stayed with 3 commissioners. And I would want to make sure that we understand how we're going to divide it up. Would there be a commissioner for Baldwin? Would there be one for Lecompton? Would there be one for Eudora? How we would divide the city up for equal representation. I think we just need more exploration.
Okay, and Leslie?
Yeah, as a member of the city commission of 5 people, I think increasing it is a really good idea, just to make sure we have, as much as we can, different perspectives that are coming to the table every time. One thing that I was thinking of is that I was on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council for 2 years when I was first elected, and we actually turned that over to Commissioner Ananda when she was elected in January, because she's a lawyer, and that's a good perspective to have on there. So I just wanted to point out that having those different perspectives is really important, and that laundry list that I spilled out there was actually all ideas from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, so that might be a really good idea to check that out.
All right, and our next question, and Patrick, you're the one that starts this one out. What is your opinion about the overall fiscal health of Douglas County? Would you do anything differently than the current commission with the budget process, which is now going on? And you have 1 minute for that answer.
Did you say fiscal health or overall health?
Fiscal health.
Fiscal health, okay. Yeah, so I sat in the budget hearings for Douglas County quite a number of times over the past couple weeks, and I will say I was sort of, I wanted to raise the bar a little bit for them. In my experience, I would like to see more data-driven decision-making when it comes to the budget. I would like to hear goals from each one of the agencies that are funded and their pursuit to reach those goals when it comes budget time. I think making those decisions without that data seems sort of random to me, and we need to find a way to have a clear process where we're looking at data-driven results to make fiscal decisions. That doesn't mean we can't be creative and thoughtful, but we certainly need to make those decisions based on evidence.
All right, and let's go on back over to Leslie then.
Yeah, well, as someone that's been involved with the city's budget process 3 years now, it's just a very long process for us, and lots of opportunity for people to engage, which they do, whether they have perhaps petitions for things they want to fund. I actually find it really interesting when we go through the process every time to see what people are putting to the top of the list. But one thing that's really great is just making sure that we have citizen engagement. Of course, at the city, we're looking at having priority-based budgeting, where we're able to judge priorities of different projects across all departments, rather than each department having their own set amount of money that they use, and then they determine what they think is the highest priority. We can take those projects and actually do a matrix and show across all departments what would make the most impact on our entire community. And it's just been a really fun experience to do, and I enjoy it. It's a lot of hard work, but I enjoy it.
All right, and John Magnuson.
You know, this is going to be more and more of an issue in the near term. We don't expect any sudden reversal at the federal or the state level in terms of their trend of pulling back support for, you know, very important, vital community services. So it's going to be more and more important for us to tackle those at the county level. That means every dollar that we spend is going to have to stretch farther and farther. I agree with Patrick. A lot of this is going to come down to requiring our agencies, not just the external agencies that get funding from the county, but also our internal departments, the sheriff's department, the DAs, everything that's funded through the county budget will need to provide concrete reports of their outcomes and those areas where the money is being spent wisely versus those that are not seeing a good, positive return.
All right, and I believe you've all had a chance to talk about that particular topic. I got them all down there. All right, and Leslie, it's your turn to start. Do you think there are services that can be shared with the other communities in Douglas County to increase efficiencies? If
Oh,
so,
absolutely. Oops, sorry.
what services would you target and why? 60 seconds on that one.
Yeah, I could take more than 60 seconds. Ever since I ran for city commission, which I've done twice now, and running for county commission, one thing I've been really interested in is merging departments between city and county. I use as a really good example of law enforcement. I think that's something we should check out. They already share a recruiting school, or they already share a school and recruiting, so I think it might be really helpful if we start sharing administrative people. We have maintenance and repair, of course. Being a police officer is very high-tech now, so just having gear, you have to have someone that can fix it at the same time. So being able to share administrative costs, maintenance costs, perhaps logistics costs as well to locations would be really great. It was a missed opportunity for the city to partner with the county when they were building the Public Works Department over by the jail, because I don't know if all of you are aware of this, but a gas station that a city builds is $1 million. Obviously, we want to share those costs as much as we can, so.
All right, and John?
Yeah, I think there's a number of opportunities for the county and the various municipal governments to coordinate. And Leslie's mentioned a few. You know, there's some areas that are really county-wide issues that the county should take the lead on. And one of the primary ones there is environmental concerns. You know, we can partner with the cities to implement certain environmental protections, but it's really going to be incumbent on the county to lead on those issues. Certainly, I would like to see more coordination in law enforcement. That's a big expenditure for the city of Lawrence. It's a very big expenditure for the county, and I think more coordination there might be helpful. And transit is another area that's clearly, you know, a county-wide issue that we want to have good coordination amongst all the municipalities.
All right, Patrick Kelly.
Yeah, I think there's some real opportunities there to look at ways that, especially within the core administrative functions that we do, to streamline. Recently in budget hearings, the city and the county are sort of in two different places at budget hearings right now, so that does make that fairly difficult when the city comes with a budget request very late in the county process. So I think there's an opportunity there, but only through interlocal agreement and not in a way that would cause the loss of jobs. I think we need to make sure that we can only lose jobs through when people retire and attrition and things like that, we need to make sure we keep our strong government. And I think there are opportunities such as IT would be a possibility in merging those groups together.
All right, thank you for your answers on that question. And now on to the next question on the list. John, you'll be starting this one. Do you have concerns about conservation of natural resources within the county? And if so, what are they?
Yes. You know, some of the biggest environmental issues we face aren't necessarily local county issues. I mean, the biggest one obviously being climate change and the impact that it has. It affects us here, but it's not something that we can solve here. That said, it's something that we can help improve here. And in particular, when we have local issues around, injection wells and fracking, I think that's an area where we can both help address the overall issue of climate change, but also the very local impacts in terms of groundwater quality, the risk of potential tremors. Another key area I'd like to see us try to protect is pollinators. And I would like the county to examine a restriction and possible ban on neonicotinoids and the advocacy of planting pollinator-friendly plants on public land so that we can make our community a little more bee safe.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, on to Patrick Kelly.
John brought up injection welding, and certainly that's not something that I want to see in Douglas County, and will strongly advocate not only to discontinue it, but also to provide longer review periods so that we can address that. There are many, we have to do a better job when we think about climate change and protecting our environment in Douglas County. Our STAR Sustainability Report provides a nice roadmap for policy changes and practices that can improve our sustainability rating within the county, and that's something that we should be looking at and implementing. That goes from everything from how we direct water, instead of directing water, letting water go into the water table, to using plantings instead of spraying for noxious weeds. There are a lot of things that we can do. We can reduce our emissions. We need to be focused on clean water. We need to be focused on clean air. Yes.
Leslie Soden.
Yeah, I'm really excited about expanding renewable production in our county. One thing I've been really frustrated about in the past few years as a city commissioner is just getting our different buildings that we have, municipal buildings, and getting solar panels put up on them. I'm very grateful that I have Commissioner Larson here now, and she always makes the push for sustainability when I haven't, and so it's nice to have two of us at least. But one thing we're also really looking at is having a green belt along the Wakarusa River on the south edge of our town, because a lot of that is floodplain, and we want to make sure that we aren't developing on floodplain, because as we all know, Mother Nature wins. All you got to do is open up CNN or any news, and you're going to see flash floods rolling down. There was a small town in Maryland that was now having problems, supposedly every 500 years, but now 2 years in a row they've had flash flooding. So it's really important for us not to ignore the way the water goes, obviously, and the STAR community is really important as well to the city.
All right, John, I think you started that one, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, you did start that one. We'll move on then to our next one, the next question, and Patrick would be the one to start with this one. 60 seconds. What type of role can the county play in affordable housing, if any?
So I'm excited to see the role the commission plays in affordable housing. I really think we need to look at opportunities in Eudora and Baldwin for possible affordable housing. We are limited, and the City Affordable Housing Board has done a fair job of figuring out how to move forward within the city, but the county needs to look at other options. We need to provide transportation networks. I think the K-10 connector should stop in Eudora on the way here to provide a regional transportation network so that we can provide affordable housing in our outlying communities, so that it provides a new option for us when it comes to affordable housing and gets the county involved in the game.
All right. We have a couple of questions to,
Looking more into what they do. I haven't dealt with them much on the city level. I know that we're looking to fund more rental vouchers for the housing department, so that's really great. We also have the Lawrence Community Housing Trust, which used to be tenants to homeowners, and they are just doing such great work where they build on land, and then when they sell the house, they actually sell the improvements on the land, and that helps keep the costs down for people that are buying into that. That's really important. Protecting current affordable housing is obviously very important to us because there's pockets in our city that are affordable. Of course, making sure they're safe. We've been working on the not rental advisory, but our rental registry board, because you may have a $200 basement apartment, but if it floods, it's not good.
All right. And again, thank you all for that set of answers.
One more.
And again, I'm moving on to my next group of questions that are on a completely different page, so I have to transfer everything over. My apologies, John. You get a chance at this one, too.
That's quite all right. As I mentioned earlier, affordable housing really is a crisis, not just in Lawrence, but throughout the county. And as we look at developing affordable housing throughout the county, we'll need to do that in conjunction with a transit plan so that folks have the transportation to those areas they need to be. One thing that I do not want us to do is to move forward with housing projects or concentrate the area of affordable housing units. It's very important that affordable housing units be dispersed throughout the community. Concentrating poverty is not a winning solution. It is harmful for those that end up in those micro communities that don't then have a ladder up to better opportunities. So I want to make sure as we move forward with our affordable housing plan that we don't just build a project. It's got to be dispersed throughout our community at the countywide level.
All right. Now I think you've all answered that one, and we'll start with Leslie on our next question. Actually, it's two combined into one, and 2 minutes will be given to answer this one. What type of role should the county commission play in economic development? And the second part of that, everyone talks about wanting to create living wage jobs, but how specifically can we do that?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, we have Venture Park, which is a city and county joint venture. I was instrumental in helping to create this new economic development policy that targets industrially zoned properties in our city. Of course, that's something that can be expanded to the rest of the county as well, so I'd be really excited to work on that. One thing that I know that the chamber is working on is that they have a program where people that are graduating from KU can actually partner with current business owners here in town and just kind of shadow them and see what they do. So that's a really good program that they have coming out. Of course, obviously the Peasley Tech Center and the Career and College Career Center. Am I saying that right?
College and Career, yeah.
I said it wrong last time. Obviously, that's really important too to our workforce.
All right. And then moving on to John Magnuson.
Economic development's obviously a very large and complex issue. But there are a few things that we've seen work well in other communities and some things that we've seen haven't really had a good return. I'm going to focus first on what I don't think we should do. Economic development money should not be provided for development or businesses that can't guarantee living wage jobs or affordable housing units. It's been shown time and time again that when you give tax breaks or cash incentives to businesses that don't come with those stipulations, they don't have a positive return on the community. Economic development money has been shown to be very effective when it's used on some basic things. The first one being sales, frankly, and marketing, making sure we are marketing our community and the advantages of our communities to business and using those advantages to lure businesses here rather than the promise of cash or tax breaks. I think it's also very important when we do use economic incentives, tax breaks or cash grants, that those be focused on local grown businesses. It's much more effective for us to help local businesses grow and hire here than to try to lure somebody or try to get somebody to relocate here, as again, that's just shown not to be effective.
All right. And Patrick Kelly.
So I think one of the best ways that we can raise the wages and the economic stability of our citizens is workforce development. I've been a leader in workforce development for quite some time. 5 years ago, we didn't have any technical training in Lawrence, Kansas. And I'm really proud of the partners that came together to make that happen at Peasley Tech and the College and Career Center. And we're having dramatic results on changing the wages and the earning potential of a large portion of our community. We need to keep that that pressure on retraining our workforce so they can have high-paying jobs. and make sure that it aligns with our economic development plans, so that when we're searching for opportunities, we make sure that we have the workers that can fill those opportunities and move forward towards economic stability. I think we do need to look at our economic development plans as a whole. I think we're sort of using a dated model where we go out and try to find a business that wants to leave a community and come to our community with tax incentives. I think we need to rethink that. We need to grow from within. We need to think about sectors that we're not currently thinking about, such as our creative sector. We have a very strong creative sector in Lawrence. Lawrence is very geared to be a creative community, and with the right resources there, that could really be a driver. Our local food policy could be a driver for economic development. We could be a destination for people as they think about accessing local food. And those are things that we haven't considered in our economic development policies, and something I think that we should start to push our economic development leaders for.
All right, I believe you've all three had a chance to take care of that double-fisted question there. Our next question, are you in favor of holding regular meetings with the city governments and school districts in the county? If yes, what would you hope to accomplish? If no, why not? And I believe we start with John on this one.
Yes, it is a little bit ironic that the city government and the county government are only 4 blocks apart, but we seem to have some difficulties in communicating. I think regular meetings amongst various departments and amongst the commissions would be helpful for that. Another key area that I would like to see the 3 taxing authorities coordinate on is the overall affordability of property taxes in our community. And this is going to take probably years to get where we need to be, but we can start with some small things. One is to get all 3 taxing authorities to agree on a set level of property tax exemption and time that in coordination with the required mill increase to keep revenues neutral. We also need to start coordinating some of the those things we discussed earlier in terms of the areas where the city and the county can perhaps consolidate efforts and save money. All of these things would be open and move forward much more effectively if there were regular ongoing meetings
All right.
between the various taxing authorities.
Patrick?
My experience has been through partnerships, and partnerships start with good relationships, and good relationships come from being face-to-face with people. So yes, I am for regular meetings. One of the reasons I'm running is I think it's disappointing sometimes that the school district is not involved in some of our conversations from a city and county level. There is currently not a member of the school district on the CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. If we believe that there's a pipeline to prison and that pipeline to prison begins in schools, then we should have schools involved in that. As I've explored that, I've heard both sides say, well, this person wasn't invited or this person isn't invited. We need to find a way to get through that, and that comes from good partnerships. So I think there's tons of potential for those partnerships. We've seen some of those partnerships create tangible results, such as out at Peaslee Tech and the College and Career Center, where we can have shared use facilities. And I would expect that those conversations would continue. I also think it would help us with such things as the overall property tax, understanding how many times we're going to hit the population with a property tax increase, when a bond issue is timed through the school district. It also would help with looking at growth and our comprehensive plan. How do we look at ways that we can make sure we have room set aside for schools and infrastructure, and considering schools as part of that infrastructure, so that we're not seeing overcrowded like we do at Southwest Sunflower and some of our West Side schools. So yes, I think those regular meetings could produce tangible results. The first step is just getting them talking and getting them understanding what each person values and how we can find common purpose to move forward.
And Leslie Soden.
Yeah, we've tried to have those common meetings. We've only had a couple of them that I can remember. But the last one that we had, gosh, I think that was last summer even. So we definitely need more frequent meetings. Scheduling between three governments is obviously quite difficult. But at our last meeting, we talked about transit, we talked about school buses, crossing guards, the school zones that we have in front of schools, where we have painted the not the sidewalk, but the road, and it's amazing how even that kind of issue, how complicated it can get between governments. Another thing that I think is really important that I've been advocating for is when we're talking about pushing back the boundaries of our city, like past the SLT, especially on the west side, we need to make sure that the school board is actually ready to accommodate that growth, especially in terms of school children. I know that the school board has property on the west side of the SLT, but that doesn't mean that they're ready to build a building and actually staff it with teachers. The Wakarusa Valley School closing, I thought, was a major deal for the south side of our town. That has a severe economic development impact on bringing families here. So definitely everything we do, the more that we can discuss those things, the better.
All right. And one more here on this particular list. Given the opportunity, and I believe we begin with Patrick on this one, given the opportunity, would you support the legalization of marijuana in the county? At what level? Decriminalization, medical, recreational, where do you stand on the marijuana question?
County issue. Yes, I think we've come a long way in the past, in recent times, thinking about marijuana. I think it is a way to decriminalize it, will bring down our jail population, and that's certainly something I'm supportive of. However, that said, I think we have to understand that we live in a blue dot in a red state, and while it may happen medically, and I would support that, and we have to understand that Topeka is Topeka, and we just started getting alcohol sold on Sundays. So, you know, we got to continue to work for those things to reduce our jail population. So, yes, I would be supportive of that.
All right, and Leslie Soden.
Yeah, this is definitely an issue I think that we really need to elevate to the state level, which is why I've started talking about it. Yeah, I don't know if our state is actually ready for recreational use. Definitely start with medical use. Being next to Colorado, I've been constantly envious of the amount of dollars that go into their coffers related to the legalization of marijuana. One thing that we're actually trying to do at the city level is work on decriminalization and reducing the fines and penalties. I think it'd be really helpful if we were able to go back to older records, and anyone that actually has that kind of violation on their record, if we can go back and expunge it somehow, I think it would be really helpful for those people, because we're, you know, a college town and college students experiment. So I don't want college students to have for the rest of their lives on their record, you know, that they have this marijuana violation and now they can't get school loans and now they might have troubles getting other jobs. So yeah, I think decriminalization is really important.
All right, and John.
I do support the legalization of marijuana. Regardless of what we're able to accomplish at the state level, there are some things we can do at the local level to effectively decriminalize it. I think working with our law enforcement and our DA to deprioritize any enforcement of marijuana issues would be appropriate. Basically ask our DA not to pledge not to prosecute any marijuana offenses, and ask our sheriff's deputies and our police force not to arrest anyone for marijuana offenses.
All right, and again, going to move now to questions. The questions we had now, a couple of different pages from various people involved directly with the group Voter Education Coalition. Now from our audience here today, we have several questions that have been turned in, and you can still do that. We have about 20 minutes left to go with the scheduled time to end at 4:30. So I'll begin and keep this moving right along. I believe, Leslie, you'll start this group as well. The county and city have many written and unwritten agreements outlining how costs and responsibilities can be split and are split. Do you support reviewing these agreements and ensuring that they meet all requirements set forth in the Kansas Constitution and that they are equitable? Please explain. Our person asking the question says you should get 90 seconds for that particular question.
Yeah, I think that's definitely really important that any agreements that we have, we go back and review them. I think it's really helpful if we have the manpower to go and review them all at once, instead of looking like we're cherry picking certain MOUs. That's really important. So I think this is just kind of a standard government review that we should be doing every so often.
All right, and John Magnuson.
Yes, I do think we need to do a review of a lot of these joint agreements. Some of them aren't even codified in a written agreement form, so I think that the review is necessary. I think beyond that, though, it's a broader question of what function or what functions really are supposed to be handled at the county level versus the city level. And we may find that there are some of these joint agreements that would be better served if they were owned, if you will, by one or the other rather than both. We see often a lot of community complaints where somebody says, hey, I had this issue, and the city said, well, that's a county issue. And the county says, well, hey, that's a city issue. And I hear these complaints, a lot of people that feel like they get the runaround, and those could be alleviated if there were clear roles in some of these joint programs where it is a county matter or it is a city matter.
All right, and then to Patrick.
Yeah, I think it's crucial that we go over these interlocal agreements to understand how they work. As someone who has put together lots of partnerships, being as explicit as possible, unfortunately, you're going to miss some things, but there's a benefit to that. And also putting a timeline on it when you revisit it so that it becomes a regular cycle, and there's clear guidelines on who should come to the table, understand, review the document, and then enact that document. I think that that's really critical to good partnerships, is understanding each person's role, and I would support reviewing them regularly.
All right. And on to another question from someone in our audience today. The Horizon 2020 plan calls for discouraging sprawl by redistricting or restricting growth of real estate development away from the perimeter of the city of Lawrence. Do you agree with this, and how would you try to ensure that that continues to happen as a county commissioner? And that would begin John's turn at first.
Yeah, and I don't want to imply that this is just a city matter or a county matter. One big concern that we have when we put together plans like Horizon 2020 and our various growth plans for the cities is, there's what we want and what we think is going to happen. And then as we move forward, there's what the market demands and the market wants. I think we've seen this recently with the development there at South Iowa Street and the South Lawrence Traffic Way. And we had a plan and what we wanted in terms of where we wanted development. But then we have some developers who say, no, actually, this is the right location for this kind of a project, and this would be beneficial to the community to have it in this location. And we need to be flexible in those circumstances, not just to avoid lawsuits, but we need to be flexible because as things evolve and change, we need to continually maximize what's going to be best for our community. So I think the county and the city can work together on these plans. I think we can have some nice direction and roadmaps, but it's very important that we maintain that flexibility so that when promising developments come forward, we don't just say, nope, that wasn't on the plan, we're not going to do it, but we actually look at it on its merits at the time.
I should have told you, but you did stay in the boundaries. That's a 60-second answer for that particular question. So Patrick Kelly.
I love answering questions about our comprehensive plan in 60 seconds. So I'm on the steering committee for Plan 2040, and yes, that is a new part of the plan that I'm very supportive of, is a tiered system of looking at reducing sprawl by expecting those who want to develop outside of a certain tier to provide a community benefit back to the community. The county's role in that is that question's a little tricky with the county's role, but I would say that the county needs to make sure, sort of on a different level, that we have to watch how much residential we're expanding in the county. We have approved some residential development in the county and lost some very valuable agricultural land. So I think that's what we have to protect against sprawl, is actually the county moving in towards the city. That certainly is something that we need to look at. I would also mention that Many of the parts of the comprehensive plan rely on sector plans, which are actually for the very specific areas where that development is occurring, and we need to make sure those sector plans align with the comprehensive plan.
All right, thank you, Patrick, and Leslie Soden.
Well, the complication with Lawrence and growth is that we're surrounded on three sides by rivers. So, you know, we're surrounded by floodplain. You start going out west and you start hitting extremely rocky earth. If you ever want to know how much it's going to cost, just go and ask the utilities department how much we could even begin to spend to get our utilities out past SLT, because the environmental concerns with that are just so expensive. So definitely having to look inward is really important for us. Encouraging density is really good. That doesn't necessarily mean I encourage 7-story buildings downtown, obviously. There's a happy medium we can find. A few years ago, actually maybe over 5 years ago, we had the traditional neighborhood design that led to the Bauer Farm development, excuse me. That was supposed to be a really more traditional neighborhood design with alleys and all of that. As we've seen, that has not manifested out there, so that's been very frustrating as well. Personally, I'm really interested in tiny home communities. I think that could be a really good solution for some people, not everyone, but I would bow to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board.
All right, thank you very much, and we'll start with Patrick, I believe, on this next question. What criteria would you use when deciding on approving or denying county special event permits? And this will be a 60-second question.
Yeah, so I've seen quite a bit of these come, special use permits, and maybe not event permits, on the Planning Commission. And I think the first thing to do is to listen closely to the neighbors and understand the parameters for the special use permit, or the special event permit in this case. We have to understand what the time boundaries are. We have to understand how many people, the traffic, the parking, the use of water, when you're thinking about how many people are going to be there and how many toilets are going to be flushed. And you get really into the weeds really quickly on thinking about special use permits. But those are the things that will have a broad impact. Safety, depending on where people park, gets involved. So there's a laundry list of things that we would need to go through on a special use permit. Or on a special event permit. Did that a couple times. Those are all things that I would consider and make sure that the neighbors understand how that's going to impact their quality of life.
All right, and Leslie Soden.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to the county and what they've been doing. I know that they had an issue with one candidate. So it kind of reminds me that at the city, we have the transient guest tax funding, which we provide grants to entities that want to have kind of tourism-based events. And they've been really helpful at looking at all of these applications for monies, of course, not just a permit. And being able to put them all in one matrix kind of together and say, this is what we want our community to support. I think that's a really important public decision that is being made by that advisory board. And I think it'd be really helpful for the county to have something like that as well. You know, it removes kind of any kind of subjective bias that a particular commissioner might have, and encourages neighborhood participation as well, whether that's in the county or not.
All right, and John Magnuson.
One of the things that makes our community great and unique are all of the special events. You know, whether it's a bike race or a downtown shot put or a concert or a farm fair, these things help give our community a wonderful quality of life, and that's attractive not just to our residents, but also potentially to businesses that may want to locate here. So I think we need to, as much as possible, facilitate a process that isn't too onerous, that isn't too complicated, and that isn't too expensive for folks to have a special event. That said, it's very important that we do have a standardized process for these things. We obviously need to make sure that the event planners have a plan for safety, for sanitation, for traffic and transit, and also a chance for input from the neighbors so that we can have proper boundaries set on the time of the event, noise levels, et cetera. But I think with a standardized process that is accessible for the community, we can benefit from a lot of these events.
All right, and as we move through these questions from our audience again, I do have several more, and we have just about 10 minutes left to answer questions, so let's move on to the next one. As a county commissioner, this would be to Leslie Soden. Leslie, as a county commissioner, would you resist annexation efforts by cities within the county, or is annexation necessary?
Well, I suppose that we're talking about Lecompton and Eudora and Baldwin when we're talking about
I'm going to
annexation.
assume that they're talking about the other communities. We talked a little bit about Lawrence and annexation, perhaps the smaller communities within the county.
I would imagine that they have a lot of the same issues that we look at here. Even though we might be the largest town in the county, that doesn't mean that our issues and concerns are different from smaller communities. So I think that'd be really important that, you know, if they want input from the city of Lawrence and the process that they're doing, obviously they can have it. But when it comes to us interacting or regulating, you know, those are different cities. And so I guess I'm resistant to meddling in other cities' affairs. I'm not sure that answered their question, though, that they had.
Well, we can move on, and John Magnuson, see if you've got a thought on that.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary or appropriate for the county to resist the annexation of lands by the other cities, but there is an important equity issue. Those cities in Douglas County that are not of the first class do receive a lot of their infrastructure support from the county. And as they grow and as they annex land, I think it's important for those cities to take on a larger burden of their infrastructure that are within their cities. For instance, we wouldn't want to see, you know, Lecompton annex a bunch of land and then not have the resources to pay for the infrastructure on that land, because currently Douglas County is responsible for all of the roads in Lecompton. So we would need to work with those cities to make sure that they actually have a plan to maintain those lands as they annex them.
All right, and let's see, Patrick.
Yeah, I would agree that if the outlying cities wanted to annex property, they need to make sure that they have the infrastructure or the plans to support the infrastructure for the lands that they are annexing into the city, and that it meets their own local plans for growth.
All right. Another question, and this deals with, I guess, just an identity of a particular issue, and that is, please share your ideas that could promote sustainability. A 60-second answer will be provided on this. John, you're the one to start this one.
Yeah, I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, and Leslie has you know, the county championed this, but I'd like to see the county move away from fossil fuels as much as possible, and for our energy usage, try to move to more energy efficient appliances, lights, et cetera, as much as possible. But beyond that, you know, I think we as a community and through the commission can advocate on these matters a little more effectively. It was disappointing to see, you know, that Westar is going to be charging higher rates to folks that use solar. I think the county and city governments could have pushed a little harder against that. I would like to see the county supportive of efforts to build wind energy here wherever we can. And then beyond that, the use of our public lands. Like I said, I think that there are some things that we can do locally to help improve the pollinator population within our county, which is very vital, and we have the land to do that.
All right, sustainability. Patrick Kelly.
So sustainability is a very wide idea. It is not just about environmentalism. It is also about things such as voter engagement, the ability of people locally to find jobs that will support the work that they do, the taxing on climate change, the STAR sustainability report that I referenced earlier is a fantastic document to look at for ways that we can change policy. Some of the specific things that I like in there is maybe starting with county employees and talking about how we can incentivize them to carpool to work so that we can be a beacon at the county level for the types of practices we would like to see countywide. How we incentivize those, how we encourage those practices, whether that's how we redo buildings, you know, that takes more discussion, but certainly with the new facilities study that's going on, and with the police moving out of the law enforcement building, we should look at ways for our built environment to create a better sustainable building.
All right, and Leslie Soden.
I feel like this is a question targeted at me and my pipe dreams. So I've written down all of my pipe dreams that I have for sustainability. Renewable energy, obviously I want to expand that, but that would involve perhaps incentives for businesses downtown, or I should say property owners downtown, so we could perhaps cover all of downtown in solar power. We could have our parking lots that we could have, just like the Merck is building solar panels over their parking. I think that's really fascinating. I think that's something that the city can do to I don't know, power something, but so, it's my pipe dreams. But also my grand pipe dream, I might as well spill it, is that, of course, Clinton Lake is going to need to be dredged soon, and I think that is the perfect time to look at hydropower for Clinton Lake. You know, the more that we can create power locally here, the more that we can help our own environment, frankly.
All right, and again, I think that, have we all had that one then? All right, and this is going to be the last question, because we're coming to the end of our period of time for our candidates for the 1st District County Commission on the Democratic ballot. The final question, are there any issues you would like to address today that have not been covered by our questions, or your thoughts that you've presented so far? And as I say that, I'll say thank you to a special person here at the table with me who's helped with the timekeeping and only had to bing her a few times today. Thank you for your cooperation. But Noreen, thank you so much for your help with that today. Noreen Spears, thank you. All right, our first answer on that comes from Patrick.
And we have 30 seconds on this?
You have 15 seconds, actually. No,
15 seconds
this-
to
no,
say
this is a minute
everything
and
we
a
want to
half.
say
This-
and haven't said yet. Thank you.
This is 90 seconds. You have a
90
minute and a half.
seconds. You know, I in part, as our last question, I think we've really covered quite a few, some of them maybe not county issues, but city issues, and that's fine. I think it helps voters determine where you stand on certain issues. I suppose the one thing that, I'll do two things. One thing I would say is I'm very interested in talking about how we can integrate the Lawrence Loop into the county's plan. There's an opportunity to take the Lawrence Loop on the north end as we head towards K10. I've been visiting with the flat group that's formed and talking about that. Westar has made some offerings. I think that would really strengthen our community, not only from a health standpoint, but also as a draw if we can work to complete that Lawrence Loop. The other thing I would say is when you think about who you're voting for county commissioner, the issues are certainly important, but it's also about the decision-making and the way that we make decisions. My experience and my leadership principles have come from many years working as a proven leader in Lawrence, and I really work hard to bring people together, not only people that I talk to consistently, but bringing other voices to the table so that we can understand how we can move forward, trying to find common purpose among those groups, and seeing how we can create a better Douglas County. So I do ask for your vote on August 7th. Patrick Kelly for Douglas County. Thank you.
All right, Leslie Soden, any thoughts that we didn't get a question about?
One big one is diversity and inclusion. That's been something we've been working on in the city, especially with our advisory boards. We have a real problem with disenfranchisement of different populations, but especially people of color in our community. I think it's really important that we not just say that we want those voices, but to make active efforts to include those. And the advisory boards are a big way to do that. Also, when it comes to hiring employees at the county or the city or the school board or anywhere, it's really important that we don't just kind of, you know, birds of a feather choose their own flock. That's not the right way to say it, but I hope people understand what I'm saying. So it's important to have kind of this outside perspective when you're hiring someone. You don't just automatically gravitate towards choosing the person that is just like you. And instead you perhaps include someone that might have a completely different perspective. It leads to better creativity and innovation and just better decision making.
All right. County Commission candidate John Magnuson, your thoughts on anything we didn't get around to asking a question about today?
Yeah, so again, I think this was a great forum, and it was pretty wide-ranging. We covered a lot. I want to, again, thank the Voter Education Coalition for putting this on, and thank my fellow candidates. I think this has been really good. You know, as a Democratic primary, I'm sure we agree on far more than we disagree on, and I think you could hear that today in our answers. I did want to touch just a little bit, though, on county government and openness and communication with the community. I think one of the big things that we heard from the community and that came out of the recent contentious Proposition 1 debate is this feeling that there's a lack of two-way communication between our residents and the commission. And we really need to tackle that. And it's going to be incumbent on every commissioner individually to help make that happen. I personally am very committed to an open and honest county government. I think that we should, wherever possible, eliminate expenses for open records requests so that every citizen feels like they can get access to county communications, can read them, and everything is an open book. Again, for those of you who like the message of our campaign and would like to help us get that message out, please go to votemagnuson.com or go to my Facebook page, Facebook.com/votemagnuson. Send me a message. I'd love to talk with you more, and I'd love your help on our campaign. Thank you.
Thanks to all three of you. I think they do deserve a hand. And that completes our broadcast today. Thanks for joining the Voter Education Coalition for our primary forum. You can re-watch the forum or pass along word that anyone can see the forum anytime on the city's YouTube channel. A special thanks to the City of Lawrence and all of the candidates for joining us. Have a great day and a great week ahead.
Thank you, Hank.